Okay, so we're gonna talk about food. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my phone. I don't know. Okay, I wrote this down, so we're gonna talk about a little bit like gag flex and everything. Yeah. Our complaint and like, my parents' complaint about everything was just about being poor and everything like that. Yeah, and then like I was wanting to like gag and everything, just automatic reaction. I don't want to keep food down. I want to spit it out. But my parents always thought I was faking and everything I was doing on purpose. And they just kept forcing me to eat. Great. So yeah, really strong gag reflex and just rejected everything. Just automatic reaction. I don't really have a gag reflex anymore because everything just automatically comes out of the mouth if it doesn't like it anymore. Because it's like, oh, I'm not going to give you a warning and I'm not going to let you choke it back and still swallow it and force yourself to swallow it and eat it. No, I reject this, so you're never going to eat this ever again, okay? You're putting food in the mouth and you're trying to swallow, and I reject it. No, it's out of the body now. It's never going back in. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, forcing to eat is great. I was talking about how you were complaining and everything. Mom didn't like to follow recipes. We had this magical thing where food was, let's see, burnt, raw, burnt and raw. You're like, oh, they just burn it. No, no. Some of it is burnt. The rest is raw. It wasn't uncommon to be uncooked, but it was almost always burnt. And then if mom tried to make something from scratch or make bread or cake or whatever, she's like, oh, I don't want you to eat sugar and I want there to be sugar in it. And then she replaced everything, so she wasn't actually following instructions whatsoever. Yeah. And then she'd like she burned water all the time. Like, that's not possible. It is. It was very much inedible. Um, my my friend and everything, they're like, how are you alive? And I was like, I don't know. I never know I'm alive, and I'm just waiting and being like, yeah, my body is probably like has some random fucking disease or some shit's fucking wrong with it. And then later on, mom's like, oh, I'm gonna try and scrape off some of this burnt stuff because burnt food can give you cancer now. Who the fuck knows what's wrong with me? I don't know. Yeah. And then, like, you're like, oh, but, like, you'd be okay with, like, raw meat and stuff like that. Because apparently some people like that. And I was like, no. I wasn't okay with it. I was forced to eat it, but I wasn't okay with it. And I never liked it. And it made me sick, like everything. Everything I ate made me sick. Yeah, I constantly, yeah. And so they're like, oh, the bloating, the stomach aches, the diarrhea, the nausea, like all these things you would see and you feel like, no, you would think would be like, oh, something's wrong here. This is like a side effect, like being really gassy and everything. You're like, oh, this is a side effect. Oh, that means you're lactose intolerant. Yeah, we can never know because I reacted that way to all food because it wasn't any good. And then we would literally have like spoiled food that would come home, and then we ate that. And yeah, and we always got food poisoning, so that was great. And then you're like, yeah, we learned that, oh, there's this thing called freezer burn, where things can go bad even though they're in the freezer. And we always had food that was way too old, and they were thick. Yeah, it's mostly because they're always hoarding, and they're always like, have enough food all the time. And I was like, no, we always made too much food and always froze it and canned it, and then we almost never ate any of it. And you're like, oh, it has to last the entire winter. Yeah, it lasted for years and years, and most of it all went bad, and we were eating moldy shit all the goddamn time. Moldy and bad shit. It just wasn't canned properly. Well, most of the time it's canned properly, and tried not to eat anything out of the cans, um, or the freezer and stuff like that. And then we had and then we had to butcher animals. I remember sitting around a picnic table that we had outside and everything like that. And we had to pluck all the feathers out of the dead chickens. And then there was just bowls of not human blood, animal blood, just on the table. That would always make me nauseous, and I'd have to run to the toilet to puke. So not gonna be in the kitchen. Um, and it wasn't uncommon to see dead animals and dead animal parts hanging outside. That's what they repurposed the swing set for. Yeah, great. Sorry, did they think we were a butcher shop? I swear. No, none of it made any goddamn sense. We're always burning from the sun because we always had to be out for hours and hours, taking care of the garden and picking. I swear, none of it made any goddamn sense. And it's all super gross. Yeah. And then my dad even took home road-killed deer. So in the truck, took it home so we could have deer meat. So they cooked that after skinning it. And then he also skinned, I think only one or two goats. Probably because maybe more than that, but only one of them like we kept as a rug. It was fucking nasty and gross, and you could still see like the blood on the bottom. That was just dried now. It was fucking disgusting. Yeah, so, anything that has, like, any fat or blood on it, I won't fucking touch, because I was always forced to eat that shit. And I'm sorry, salt, pepper, and a bunch of fucking ketchup and mustard can only do so much. It still tastes fucking gross and disgusting, and now I can't really eat any meat. Yeah, my body really hates me. It can rarely eat any meat, and you're like, oh, unless it's super cold and it's doused in hot sauce and, like, fucking ketchup. So I can't taste anything except for the hot sauce and the ketchup. I can only taste the condiments, and then we learn about other spices, so we cover everything with spices. I just want to eat condiments and the spices, but I can't eat them by themselves because your mouth will get tired of them and doesn't like it by itself. And it's usually too much, so you have to eat it with something, and you want it to be a little bit more than just, like, a piece of bread. And also, I fucking hate bread. Fucking bread by itself is fucking gross, especially since you need to, like, fucking toast it anyway just to be safe, because fucking who knows, like, so much time that all the time it would get old and it would be moldy, and, like, it would look fucking gross, and it would be probably wet and damp, and it would probably be about to mold, and it was just must have kept in the freezer and shit, even though it's past its due date. But you don't have anything else to eat, so you just fucking throw it in there, because all I can eat is carbs. So I can just eat fucking toasted bread, or, like, bagels, always toasted, never plain. Always toasted. I can't eat it while it's as normal. And so it's mostly just that, maybe a little bit of crackers, and the only meat I can have is pepperoni, because you don't taste anything with pepperoni, and bologna you don't really taste that much either, but I don't usually eat that much of it anyway, and I usually, like, use maybe, like, a sandwich or something else with that. Actually, I usually use, like, cover it in cheese and crackers, so then you're like, oh, so then I can't taste it, and I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have cheese, but I don't have anything else to eat, so whatever the hell. And mostly just eating a lot of pasta, and, like, ramen and mac and cheese and stuff like that. I was like, you get tired of that real fast, so then you just slowly add more and more things. I learned that soy sauce goes really well with it, and you just add them by one by one. You're like, oh, you just add one thing, and then you eat it. Like, no, I get tired of it so fast. So yeah, I take me a bite or two when it's cold, put it in, and I do like it cold most of the time, because then you can't taste anything at all. Yeah, if I eat meat at, like, 100% has to be cold, not heat it up, because it tastes fucking disgusting, because more of the flavor, you can taste more of the flavor when it's hot, so it's fucking gross. Yeah, and I just want to taste slices or whatever the hell I put on top, so you eat a little bit cold, but if it's safe and spaghetti, then you probably eat some of it cold, and then you heat some of it up, because most of the time, you want what? You want hot noodles or warm noodles, and you want cold sauce on top, because then your body is confused and accepting more of the food, because you have hot and cold going on. You have different temperatures that are going on in your mouth. So your body's interested and intrigued and willing to eat more. And then that doesn't keep your body that interested that long. So then you add, like, some salt, some pepper, mostly just a lot of pepper. Then you add more and more pepper. And then you maybe add Parmesan cheese if you wanted to before that. But if it's, like, just mac and cheese, then you eat a little bit plain, heat it up, add tons of pepper, eat a little bit of that, bite or two with that. Then you grab soy sauce. That's why you don't add the salt. You pour a bunch of soy sauce, well, you pour a little bit, and then you add more and more. And then you're like, oh, it's too much soy sauce, and then you go and get, like, Mrs. Dash and pour that on. And then you might be able to finish the bowl. And, oh, you can't just eat that, and you also obviously can't leave the kitchen or go anywhere or do anything else when you're eating, otherwise you will not eat anything. And you also have to have, like, a bunch of other things around, so, like, maybe those crackers, and maybe some heated up pepperoni, and also some cold pepperoni, so you get that temperature difference again, and you get different flavors like that, and then you stack a lot of the pepperoni together, so then it's more spicy, it has more spices and stuff, it's more flavor. So yeah, and then you just take a bite of each, or you maybe try them together, like, do whatever the hell you want, but you have to eat more than one thing. And then obviously you're drinking water, and then you're probably also drinking juice in your water, and then you're probably also trying different juices with your water. You're just doing everything. You're probably trying to eat some fruit. Apparently we don't really most of the time have any vegetables, and then with vegetables you might just be adding ranch, because the vegetables now taste like shit, because you grew up on vegetables, and you grew up on what? Bread. You grew up eating bread, horrible cooked vegetables and meat, undercooked, overcooked, and burnt. You can find all three sometimes in food. But you're like, oh, that's just burnt on the bottom. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter where. It can be burnt in the middle, it can be burnt in the top, it can be burnt everywhere. And you can have, like, a piece where it's raw at the end, burnt at the other end, and slightly cooked in the middle. Yeah, or something longer like green beans. It's great. She got a little bit better. She's like, okay, I'll actually like follow the instructions and like I set timers and everything and not forget about it. And I'll like stay in the kitchen the full time and I won't do anything else and I'll solely focus on cooking. So she can make like something like spaghetti or just put like a frozen pizza in the oven and not burn it. But then they also used to like try and add like water or milk to the fucking bread to make it softer because my dad had dentures and he couldn't eat shit and it fucking tastes horrible. Yeah, and then my dad was always like, "Oh, I can make food better than mom." No, no, you fucking can't. And you just threw a frozen pizza in the oven and didn't burn it. And sometimes you did, but it was just a little bit. And then could also maybe make spaghetti. And you rarely ever made it, and you never made it when she was there. Just lying ho. Yeah. And then we only got like some little bit of like real cake or any sugar on like birthdays or if we went and then so most of the time the only reason that I like really like to go to church is because they fed you at church. They would have like donuts or something like that. They would give you snacks and stuff. And church class, they had little classes for depending on what grade you are. And then they also had the main service. Yeah, they had all stuff. So they had divided up so they could give you, what was it, like childcare or whatever. So they had the nursery and stuff like that, where kids mostly just played, and they gave them maybe a little bit of food and stuff like that. Yeah. So we went to church because it was free food. And my parents just wanted another excuse not to make any food. And most of the food should have gone to the trash, but instead we ate it all because you're not allowed to waste food. And then our trash food, which is mostly just the peels of stuff, or the seeds, were just given all to the animals. When most of our food and most of the stuff that we were given, and literally like the leftovers from the restaurant, we had like China one and everything. Yeah. My dad would give him like eggs, and then he would give us leftovers, which was slop, which it was bad and old. They were supposed to give it to the animals, but instead we ate it. Yeah, so yeah, thanks for all the food poisoning life. They were like, oh, your immune system should have got better. You should have like an iron stomach. You should be able to eat like raw crap from that. Yeah, no, that's not how that works. We hate food now. And then we also have the whole deal of feeling guilty and thinking we're fat and everything. And I also figured out, I was like, hey, do you remember why you always felt like you were fat and everything? And then I was like, oh, sometimes it was like just the dirty looks and like the looks and the comments from like kids in school. And I was like, oh yeah, that gave me a little bit of problem, but not really. But then I was like, oh yeah, like for the gender dysphoria and everything, instead of focusing like on the parts that we really hated that associated with the gender that we couldn't do anything about, we focused all our attention on our stomach. So yeah, like I was cutting my chest and like my thighs and everything, and so we're like, hey, we should probably just stop cutting our chest if like we're gonna get surgery, because they might complain about that and we might not be able to get surgery if we have scars on our chest. So we're gonna go ahead and switch to our stomach, because we can totally control that. We totally don't have depression, and we totally. And then also I was trying to make myself fatter sometimes because I was like, hey, the stomach will match up with the chest and it'll stick out farther than the chest. The stomach needs to be bigger than the chest so no one can find out that I have a chest. Because apparently you can still sometimes see it, or mostly I just notice it because even though I'm wearing double XL t-shirts and the baggiest clothes in the goddamn world, you can still see that maybe I had a chest or whatever. And it was even when I had switched, because you're like the double XL, so it's smaller in the girls section, but the double XL in the guys section, so it's bigger, and yet you're still freaking out because it's the same thing you noticed, and I'm just freaking out always about my stomach and everything like that. I was like, no, you really just hate your chest, and you want an excuse not to eat, especially since you saw and you were inspired by all the anorexics, because I was like, you don't have chest, you don't have butts, you don't have thighs, you don't have anything. And they were always complaining about it. They're like, oh, I don't have a chest, like, I don't have any thighs, and I don't have anything that men are attracted to. And I was like, it's what I want. You have the goal, you have the perfect body. Give it to me. And especially also what I was taught, I was like, guys don't have any butts and don't thighs and none of that crap. And then I was like, oh, they do. And so I'm kind of more confident and I'm okay with more and more with my body. So I'm still not okay with my chest and still need surgery. But after that, I was like, for the most part, that'll cure, like, my body dysmorphia. I was like, because they're like, oh, because, like, for gender dysphoria and, like, being trans, I was like, it's totally treatable. You can fix it. Well, you can just treat it and you can cure it, basically, with hormones and surgery. And some people don't even need hormones or surgery, they just need outfits and makeup, and so maybe like social acceptance and maybe changing their name, or just changing their name and pronouns around friends, people that they care about, and being a little bit accepted. They don't even need to do anything. And then a lot of us have to do something and aren't so lucky we need therapy and everything like that. So then hormones, some people are like, oh, okay, I'm okay with hormones, and like I don't have to do that much of hormones. I don't have to do a long time of hormones. I don't have to have a large dose. I'm just complaining about my body like normal. Yeah. Um, but yeah, but yeah, um, but yeah. Cause like the gender dysphoria turned into like the body dysmorphia. Because I cared like a little bit of my weight and stuff like that. Most of the time I didn't care. And I was like, oh, I'm just nice and eating food and everything. And most of the time I was just hungry and I was like, I just want to eat enough food. And then, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, I don't deserve to eat, or like I'm too tired and I'm too lazy and I'm too lazy. I'm just more too freaked out and I don't want to do anything and I feel paralyzed in my bed because the world's too overwhelming and it's freaking out. And I always call myself lazy, but I'm like, oh, probably not. I'm just too overwhelmed and freaked out about everything, so I can't really move or do anything like normal. But you call it lazy because you can't do anything. You're like, I should be doing everything, and you feel guilty about it. And you feel guilty about it eating and everything because your parents are always like, you have to eat, and always complaining about it because they're like, kids in Africa, they don't have food. They would eat anything. They would drink fucking piss and shit because they don't have anything else. I was like, if they had something else, then they would totally eat that instead. Like, if we had something else and we could find and try and make our own food, we would totally eat something else. That we're not able to, and we have all this nice food that you just burnt and you made into trash, and you're forcing us to eat. And my punishment also was to eat coconut oil, because we didn't like it, and everything tasted horrible. We were forced to eat coconut oil, and I was forced to eat like a whole clove of garlic straight from the plant as a punishment for having a nasty mouth. Because I was angry and I fought back for once. Wow, really? Instead of completely shutting out and shutting down 24/7 to just waiting for it to end. Great. So, yeah. I mostly just like honey buns or like sweets and stuff like that. And then I'm like, hey, I don't like some things if they're too sweet. But most of the time we're too desperate and we're too hungry that we'll eat anything. And we're like, we eat sugar because it tastes good and we don't have any bad memories associated with it. And we're always given to it as treats and everything. And I don't have any bad association with things like ham. But I, like, barely ever had lamb. I hate deer. I tried it once, and I hated it. It's fucking disgusting. I don't really like hamburgers. I do like a one cheeseburger or whatever. I'll rarely, occasionally get it. But all I'm really tasting is what? Mustard, ketchup, and pickle. On 2 buns. That apparently has a slice of really overcooked meat in the middle, so you can't taste the meat. And then I might add, like, more ketchup or some hot sauce to it, so if I taste a little of the meat, so I don't ever taste any of the meat. And I just add hot sauce to everything, because then I'm like, my mouth is on fire, which means we can't taste anything except for what's lighting our mouth on fire. So, yeah. All these little hacks and different things, and always bribing myself with sugar. So being like, because we eat sugar, but we won't eat food. So I was bribing myself and being like, I promise you sugar if you eat something. Because the body is always starving and angry at me and hates me and is always hurting. But you're like, that's normal, because that's what we grew up on. We grew up with stomach pain, bloating, and nausea, and that was just normal. And that's obviously why being lactose, we had to figure that out, because my body wouldn't hold down any more food, because it's like, hey, you never listened to me for all of the other goddamn symptoms, because you were always suffering it from everything. So all food was causing that, and now that almost all food isn't causing that, and we figured out that, hey, we're really just reacting to milk, and milk's the only thing that our body's really responding negatively to. We're gonna, like, puke everything that even has, like, the tiny bit, like, oh, like, has some fucking mayonnaise or some shit. Or, like, oh, you ate, like, a yogurt today, so now you're gonna spend an hour puking over the toilet, and you won't be able to eat anything. So, yeah. My body hates food. It craves it, but it hates it. And my brain makes me feel guilty about eating it, and it's not like my anorexic behavior is gonna ever be fixed or anything like that, because then I was like, oh, do you like, oh, fixed when you're living on your own and you're buying your own food? I was like, not really. I'll just use the excuse that my parents always did and everything, and I'll be like, no, money's more important, and we need to save it. Food isn't as important, we just need a little bit of food. And I would also, like, stock up on it and be like, hey, this needs to last me, like, the entire year. So when I would go shopping, I would just get a bunch of, like, bagels and bread, and obviously buy a toaster and a microwave, and buy a whole lot of pepperoni, a little bit of bologna, probably some sugar to keep me motivated, and to make sure that I actually bought food. And we're gonna buy a lot of it and stock up on it, and then that's gonna last me, should last over probably around 4 months or over it, and just cereal also. And then, obviously soy milk. And then also we're gonna have to buy strawberry and chocolate syrup so we actually drink the milk. Because we don't like it when it tastes by itself. We're okay with it when it's sugar, but we also don't like things that are straight sugar. So just try and use a little bit of sugar, buy less sugary and things. But I usually just crave a lot of sugar because we're like, sugar replaces food. You don't need as much food if you have more sugar, because the sugar replaces it. It makes sense. It's high calories, because it has a lot of sugar, then you don't need as much food. At least that's what my body's telling me, and you're like, oh, but you're missing out all the nutrients. So I was like, not necessary. And then they're like, oh, for like protein, because you don't have any protein, but you have probably some fiber in your diet. You don't have any protein. I hate beans. I grew up on that, and I grew up on meat, and we hate both of those things. We do not eat that. We would never make it. We would never buy it. We hate it. So no meat, no beans. And then you're like, oh, but nuts, like peanut butter. No, I don't really like it. I'd eat it very sparingly. I ate quite a bit of it today, because I toasted the bread, and I made P&Js with the toasted bread. And I obviously added a ton of jelly, because we like jelly over peanut butter. And we kind of just tolerate the peanut butter. Mostly because it just helps it make the sandwich stick together, but we put it on very thin. But we ate a lot of it because we made 2 sandwiches. Yeah. We still like fruit and vegetables because you can't fuck that up. Because you eat those things raw. But then they do not taste that great a lot of times, and most of the time they do taste rotten to me, because I probably didn't know and realize that you're probably eating most of the time rotten foods, so even if they're not rotten at all and they're not going bad, I'm so used to being them tasting rotten, so now they automatically taste horrible. Yeah. And also for like a meal or whatever, I might just find one of those bags of frozen vegetables and just throw one of those in there, and maybe 2, just probably, since I'm so hungry, I'll probably just eat 2. Throw those out, both in the microwave, cover it in salt and pepper, and just eat it straight out of the bag. Or maybe I'll put it in bowls so I mix them both together, like the peas or whatever. And the peas and the mixed vegetables, and you mix them together and eat them all. And then obviously, since you can't just eat them by themselves because you get tired, you might also add a little bit of soy sauce with it. I also like rice, though, but mostly just cover it completely with soy sauce, otherwise I won't eat it. And then this rice is tricky because it can be hard, so uncooked. It can be a little bit cooked and still a little bit hard, and then it can be burnt and overcooked. So easy to mess up rice. You're like, it's not hard. You use a rice cooker. Somehow they still fail. It doesn't work. They just do not turn out right, and it's just too dry, or it's too fucking wet. So rice is very tricky, and it can't be trusted, so you rarely eat rice. Yeah, but put a little bit of soy sauce on your vegetables, a lot of pepper, maybe a little bit of salt, probably not any salt for the most part, especially since if we're going to put soy sauce on it, and then we'll also use Mrs. Dash, or apparently Original, which is basically the same thing as Mrs. Dash. It looks like all the same. Especially since that has a little bit of salt in it, so you definitely don't need salt. And then I mostly just switched to that recently because it has more spices. Because before that I just kept putting onion and garlic powder, and I couldn't find the powder anymore, and it was just mice, and I was like, I don't really want the mice right now. And then also for like ramen and everything, like you add the packet in there, and then you add, you can also add soy sauce. And then you're like, oh, you'd only eat like one at a time, or you add it to part of it. No, you mix it all together. So in the end, you're eating soy sauce. So all you taste is soy sauce, pepper, Mrs. Dash, and maybe you decide to add some onion or garlic powder in it. And it's all you can taste. And that is how you eat food. Because all you taste is condiments and spices. And I will eat pickles plain by themselves. But I do not like sweet pickles, and I do like big pickles. I can only trust the baby little pickles. They're only ones that taste good. And they have to be bought from the store and everything like that. I love those. I can eat a whole jar. And I ate a whole jar in like one sitting and everything. So, yeah. And then we also hate eggs right now. We can eat them by themselves or when they're plain for the most part. We can eat them when they're in something. And sometimes when there's a lot of egg in something, we can still eat it, but most of the time we can't. I used to only like them when they were sunny up and everything like that. But yeah, they used to also the only thing we'd eat, and it would always be burnt and crap like that. And I don't like taco seasoning anymore, and I hate ground beef. It just tastes like horrible. Yeah. And then I really liked the Impossible Whoppers for a while, but then I was like, even that doesn't taste that great because it's beans, and I don't really like beans. And I'd hated black beans, and I was only ever okay with kidney beans, and then I got tired of that and didn't really like those anymore. And I only really liked it, and you're like, oh, you don't taste the beans because all you taste is the spices of the meat, and can't really anymore, even though you're like, oh, you just taste like the lettuce, the tomato, and like the ketchup or whatever, and you taste the spices in the meat. And I'm like, no, that's not too much anymore, but I could order it because I was like, I found the solution to all of my problems, which is called hot sauce. Hot sauce is the solution, and no one can tell me otherwise right now. It's the only thing I can eat, only way I can eat any food basically right now. And then, oh yeah, I think I have added it to like ramen. Maybe it's just the idea in my head, and I've had it for a little bit. But just to like finish the last couple of diets, and then also like I had a whole like thing that I dipped into. I pour like a bunch of ketchup in it and a bunch of hot sauce, and then I just dip my sandwich in it and completely smother it in it, or I just smother the already covered area. Obviously, after if it's something that has pickles on it, then we take the pickles off and eat them by themselves because that's what we really like. We just want the pickles, and then we just dump the rest of it in hot sauce. So all we eat is hot sauce and ketchup. Yeah. And then, like, I'll get tired of, like, the sugar and everything, but, like, and I don't really, like it anymore, because I was like, oh, I never really had that much sugar, and I didn't really have that much sugar growing up, and I just, like, my body completely craved it, because we always didn't have it, and it was something new and exciting, and it was replacing energy and everything like that, and it was replacing food, but we still really like honey buns, and we still like some of it still, yeah, but I don't want to eat, like, all of it in, like, one sitting, and I've gotten better at not eating, like, all the chips or the stuff in one sitting, but I'm like, I'm depressed and my body has nothing to do and my hands have nothing to do and just want to chew on something, so it's either my lip, my skin, my lip, yeah, so like my lip right now, my skin, my nails, like I just need to do something with my hands and my mouth and stuff like that. My body just wants to do something all the time, and then I can just get mindlessly drone eating, and I can finish off very quickly, even though I got pretty much tired of it. And then also it's something new and different, and then I also eat both things like at the same time. And then normally I don't really want to eat a lot of it, and I want to like save it and let it last longer and get a little bit better at that, but still not really, because I'll wake up at like 4 a.m. because I didn't eat anything for the entire day, and I'll be starving. And I'll be like, oh, sugar, I can eat that, so I'll eat that. And then everything else looks unappealing and doesn't taste good and tastes like shit. You're like, oh, it's because you ate the sugar first. I was like, even if I didn't eat that sugar, it probably still tastes like shit and just unappealing, and my body wouldn't be interested and refuse to eat it. And be like, yeah, there's no food to eat it. And for the most part, that's still how it is, especially since they keep making meat and stuff in the fridge. And I was like, yeah, no, I can't eat any of this food. You don't have any vegetables. And for the most part, by the time we do have vegetables, they're fucking rotten and shit. And we never know we have them. And I'm not allowed, and we're supposed to save the fruits and the vegetables. And I can't touch it. And I don't know what half it is, and the rest of it's, like, badly cooked rice, and a bunch of beans, and mostly just raw, uncooked meat, or, like, meat that's thawing, or that was just cooked. We have, like, ham, and I ate a little bit before, but I'm not interested anymore, no. I can only eat a little bit, and you're like, oh, but I have, like, happy memories associated with ham, but I still can only, like, eat it if it's super hot, and I don't really like it, because it's super fatty, it's a lot of fat on it, it's fucking fat, it's gross, I hate that. I can't have anything that has that fat on it. I'm just not happy. Just not interested. And you can only eat a little bit, and I get tired of it super fast. And you're like, oh, canned stuff. Then all the food in the can tastes like metal and doesn't have any flavor and tastes fucking disgusting. Because I was mostly just eating things out of a can forever. I would just eat all my vegetables out of the can or like frozen, but we don't really have any frozen vegetables right now, and we don't really have any canned ones either. So, and then even when I was eating the green beans and everything like that, it tasted gross, and you're like, oh, you didn't drink the water or whatever. Just the green bean by itself, it's just horrible, even though I doused it in salt, so the only thing I should be able to taste is salt, but somehow it still tastes disgusting and I can't eat it. And it's not like, oh, you learned this trick. Oh, you magically just learned this trick to just cover everything in salt and pepper and to douse it in ketchup and stuff like that. No, apparently I was always doing this as a child so I could eat anything. And my sister was like, she talked to me one day. She's like, why are you covering your potato and ketchup and mustard and just smothering it like you would do a hot dog so you don't taste the hot dog? And I was like, because the hot dog I would need more like hot sauce or something to cover that up, because I'd still probably be able to taste the beef or whatever the hell they put in that hot dog, and that would be disgusting, the meat would be. But, for the potato doesn't taste like anything. So all it does is calm down and I just want to, it doesn't taste like anything, so why are you trying to, like, add just butter and salt and pepper? I was like, there's no flavor to bring out or to influence. It doesn't have any flavor. And for a while, I was happy, because that's how chicken tastes, and most meat tastes. It didn't have any flavor. All you taste is the condiments you put on top, but not anymore. It has a flavor, and it's disgusting, and it's gross, and I hate it. And you can't cover it up, no matter how many spices and how much ketchup, how much mustard, no many pickles. You can't cover it up. It still tastes disgusting, and I won't eat it. My body will reject it. It hates it. I'll barely swallow it, and I'll be like, you put it in your mouth, so swallow it, so you never eat it ever again. Yeah, that's how it works. I was mostly just really worried about the hot sauce thing, because I found out that I was allergic to jalapenos, so I was like, I can't have anything hot. And plus, I didn't have any tolerance whatsoever, because we got potatoes, uncooked vegetables, and horribly cooked, uncooked meat and vegetables. And most of the time, they actually tasted better raw. Yeah, because raw vegetables were usually safe, unless they were raw, but a lot of times they were raw. So, food's never been safe. I did live with my sister for a while, and that's when it was safe, and that's when I was also, like, the doctor was a little bit concerned. They're like, and also, whenever I went to the doctor, they're like, you're perfectly healthy. I was like, I don't know how. There's no way I should be fucking healthy. It's probably because I have a really slow metabolism, so it clings onto food, so it's keeping me alive. And my body always, like, had a little bit more chub and fat, so the body always could cling onto that and use it up as backup. And it was always in starvation mode, so. They're like, oh, you put your, they're talking about, like, they're trying to, like, oh, you trick your body to be in starvation mode, so you use, like, your fat or whatever you get out of starvation mode to, like, burn the fat. I was like, none of that shit works. Yeah, no, my body's always in starvation mode, and it's always starving and hungry, and it always hates me, so it doesn't really make a difference. And then it didn't, and we were finally actually eating enough so that we were full, but then we also had severe trust issues because the food is gone in 5 minutes, so you just have to shove everything in. It doesn't matter if it's burning hot or whatever. You don't wait until it cools down or that you can taste it. And the main thing, I never really tasted any of my food anyway, so I couldn't tell it was bad or whatever was happening with the food. Because I probably could when I was younger, and then I was forced to eat it anyway, so I was like, okay, the faster the better, especially since the food's going to be gone in 2 seconds, and if you don't eat it right away, it'll disappear from your plate, because someone else will also eat it. Because you have a large family, and food disappears really fast, and you have to eat as much as possible. You're like, oh, if you ever did feel full by a miracle, you have to stuff yourself, because you don't know when you're going to eat food again. You never know when you're going to eat food again. So yeah, but I still had that mentality and everything, got a little bit out of it, but for the most part, not really. And also I wanted to get fat because I was like, my stomach needs to stick out more than my chest. I have a large chest. We're not happy about it, and it keeps growing, and it won't stop growing, and it pisses me off. So, we have this fattest stomach, and actually look fat, because you're like, oh, you wear baggy clothes because you're fat. Well, I'll make it true now. Especially since I was like, my clothing size didn't change whatsoever, no matter how big I got. Because I was always wearing the baggiest clothes. Because we hated our body. We weren't comfortable with ourselves, and we wanted to hide much of our body as possible. So, nothing really changed at all. So, we looked identical. No one could tell that we were gaining weight because we looked the same. We're wearing the same clothes. We just filled out the clothes a little bit more now. And now we swim in XLs, and we wear larges and mediums now. We have a few XLs, but we got rid of most of them, and we never wear double XLs anymore. I got rid of those. Yeah, and then testosterone helped a little bit with that, but then we also ate a little bit more and was buying a little bit of our own food. And also helped when we started everything. We were eating on our sisters, so we were actually eating good food. It was always cooked. It was always cooked all the way. It was always followed the proper recipe. We were trying different varieties of food. We had a healthy balance. We always had fruit, vegetables, and meat. We always had a little bit of carbs. We always had enough food. In fact, my sister usually made too much because she was used to having us a big family and everything. So we always had leftovers. We always had enough food to eat. And we learned how to cook a little bit more. And we can make our own food. And we could make what we liked, and we could pick out what we wanted, and we always had a little bit of sugar and stuff, a little bit of a snack that I could eat at all times. So you're always fed. But I still had my issues, and I still wanted to, like, try my stuff myself, but I wasn't really there because I was like, food is there. And my body will automatically just be like, oh, I see it, so I'm going to eat it. And it's not, and the kitchen's no longer a negative, toxic space where everyone who hurts and screams us lives and is always there. So it's not a safe place to be in. And it's the place you want to avoid and never be in because it's where people are. Not anything you have to ignore and gather. You can go there and you can get food whenever you want, and there's always like water or juice or something to drink, so you're always hydrated and you're always eating food. Yeah. And it was a safe place, and we were with people we trusted, and we always just had panic attacks because Father knew where we lived, didn't like to show up randomly. But besides that, yeah, we were good. We were pretty healthy then. You were like, but the doctor was actually worried, and they were like, you're unhealthy, because they were always like, oh, you eat too much, and you have too much, like, fat in your blood and all that crap. And I was like, the healthiest I had ever been physically, because my body no longer craved sugar. It was a little bit unhealthy. Well, actually, I was still, like, pretty big. Before I figured out we were lactose tolerant, where my body figured that out. But even after that, there was still enough food, there was still enough options. But that was also before my body decided being like, fuck meat, we hate it. Beans, meat, everything, we hate it. You can only eat carbs. And maybe a little bit of vegetables and some fruit occasionally. They can basically only just survive on sugar, and then also since you ate a bunch of sugar all the time before, and you finally got used to sugar being like, oh, then you're being like, your taste buds also finally changing and everything, and being like, oh, we don't crave it anymore because it wasn't just lacking completely in our life, and it wasn't just something new, exciting, then are like, oh, this is actually like too sweet, and I'll like rarely have it, and getting more restricted and just stop just eating it on automatically. But yeah, I'm probably gonna eat a lot of caramel. I know, I love pear raisin, but I have a sweet tooth that needs to be fed, apparently. My body was complaining earlier in bed, but we're ignoring it again. And then, like, now I'll be like, oh, you just eat until you feel full. I can do that, and then 5 minutes later, I'll be starving. Like, I didn't eat the entire day, because it's what our body's used to. Especially since I only feed it once the entire day. And then I'm like, why would I feed you more than that? I fed you once, get over it. Why would I have to feed you again? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Because then you'll be like, oh, but you pushed yourself and you ate like a little bit more, so then you're like really stuffed. But give it 5 minutes, or just give me one trip to the bathroom, and I'll be starving again. So, yeah, I'm like, am I full or whatever? I was only ever full around Thanksgiving and Christmas because there was enough leftovers and there was enough food, and I was living with my sister. But then I would eat too much usually on those days, but it was fine. And that's how I always thought. I was like, it's equaled out, because I was like, you don't eat for a couple of days, and then you overeat on the one day that you eat, and then so it equals out. Not eating and eating means you ate perfectly healthy. Apparently not, but that's how it works in my brain with most things. I'm like, you slept one day, so you don't need to sleep the next day. Like, because it evens out. It equals both. I was like, positive and negative equals medium, so it equals healthy. Doing the unhealthy behavior of not eating and the unhealthy behavior of binging equals that you ate normally. That's how it works. And then if anything is similar, and similar more than just one thing, it is the same. It's identical. There's no difference. I don't know what you're talking about. That's why I'm like, I still can't explain to you or understand that there's a difference between autism and ADHD, because they share a lot of the same symptoms. So I'm like, they're the same. Apparently they're not, but to me they're the same. I just keep telling myself they're not the same, but I'm like, they're the same. It's the same thing. Also, why I was like so big about the like gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia, I was like, they're not the same thing. They're not like connected. They don't mean, because I was like, they don't mean exactly the same thing. They're different words. And it's talking more about your gender, and the body dysphoria is just talking about overall. And it's like the overall category, and see like the umbrella term like queer or whatever. And then underneath that is the gender dysphoria. I'm not saying that correctly, probably because I was also trying to eat my lips. Oh, I also have to chat my lips, so, well, mostly because I eat them, and then also because then I'm just eating the little bit of the dried chapstick. I'm eating that instead of ripping a chunk of my lip off. Yeah. Yeah, I need to eat something. Goodbye. I'll probably just eat a bunch of caramel, because I ate sandwiches and some, like, salmon. I didn't really want to, and I was disgusted by the entire thing, but I added a little bit more pepper on it. And I was like, I dedicated to this, and I wanted to finish it, so I'm gonna finish it, and I don't have to eat the bottom, because I don't know what the fuck is on the bottom of the salmon, but it's fucking disgusting. I don't want to touch it. I hated it. It was gross. and I only ate it because you're like, oh, but it was your sister's or whatever, and I was like, it was 70. It's been like 3 or 4 days since they made it. It's been over 2 days, and it might have almost been like, it's probably under a week, but it could have been close to it, because I don't know if it was just hidden in the back and it was pushed forward because things were moved around because more things were put in or not. And also, the salmon was probably one of the old salmons that was in the freezer that had been in there for a while. Yeah, okay. I don't remember anything. Goodbye.